Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 1988 Volkswagen Scirocco 16 valve. Now this is part of the second generation, produced between 1981 and 1992, with 291,497 being produced, and it was the Coupé variant of the Mark II Golf GTI. The Corrado though eventually replaced this once this generation stopped production, though the name itself was revived in 2008, and it's the second Scirocco from the 80s that we actually have on this game. We also have the 1981 Scirocco S on this game as well, which we'll be comparing this against a little bit, because there are a remarkable amount of differences between the two, despite only being 7 years apart. And yeah, first though, I do really rather like the looks of this car. But despite being a coupe, it's not lost its practicality. As you can see, it's still a hatchback, which means you've got plenty of room in the boot there, and yeah, plenty of room inside as well, as you can see. Plenty of leg room for the rear, and yeah, plenty of leg room and space up front. Looks wise, I do like it as well. It looks a bit like a DeLorean up front if you ask me, but that's not a bad thing. And yeah, engine wise, it's far better than the 81 version, because it now has a 1.8 litre inline 4 engine, producing 123 horsepower and 120 pounds-feet of torque, compared to the 1.7 litre inline 4 engine from the Scirocco S, which produced 49 horsepower less and 31 pounds-feet of torque less as well, while also only being an 8 valve rather than the 16 valve. So yeah, more impressive in terms of its engine. I do like the looks, but I think on the whole I do prefer the 81's version in terms of looks. Just looks a little less in the way of looks a little less fussy, but on the whole this is a better car in every regard, to be honest. It does weigh more though, at 2,365 pounds, so that's 350 pounds more than the S, but that weight is not wasted, to be honest, because the power is there, the torque is there, and yeah, on the whole this is a faster car than that S, while also with that extra weight means you get more for your money in terms of interior equipment, as well as space, and yeah, everything that you would require from a late 80s hatchback is pretty much here, to be honest. And yeah, like the like the S, should I say, it also has a 5-speed manual gearbox and front-wheel drive. Nonetheless, let's get out onto the track and see what this car can do. So we're at the Hockenheimring National Circuit for one lap, but first I'll let you listen to what this car sounds like before we start talking about it. So yes, it does have more in the way of weight than the S, but I don't think it's any worse in terms of handling or braking than that car. Maybe even better because it's a slightly more modern car, but it's still a car from the 80s, it's still a mass-produced car from the 80s, so it does have a fair bit of body roll on the go, but that's really fine because that just means it's got a comfy ride, which you really do want in a car like this. But that weight isn't, like I said, wasted on the power isn't wasted on that weight, should I say, because it can still do 0 to 60 in 8.3 seconds, 0 to 100 in 27.9 seconds, and going to a top speed of 123 miles an hour. Whereas the S could only get to 60 in 11.6 seconds, 0 to 148.018 seconds, and do a top speed of 105 miles an hour, which yeah is a massive gap, despite only a 7-year gap in age. So yeah, this is a massive improvement over that car, and yeah, it's also nice in terms of how it sounds. It revs quite nicely as well. You're up to nearly 7,000 RPM, and yeah, at the end of the day you've got a nice looking coupe that still has all of the practicality of a hatchback, while also still being really rather quick. Now granted, it's not quite as quick as the older, slightly newer, should I say, Mark II Golf that we also have on this game from 1992. But the only major difference between this and that car is a slight increase in power. I think it's got 16 horsepower more. The torque is the same, and that Golf actually weighs a little bit more. So yeah, that's the only real difference between this and that newer Golf. but I'm sure if you had the same year Golf Mark II on this game as this, then the differences would only be slight, maybe even slightly in the favour of this car. But yeah, it's a cracking vehicle. I wish we had more older, well I say older, more 70s, 80s, early 90s Volkswagens, to be honest, because there are plenty out there to try out. But yeah, this is a great version of the Scirocco. It's a shame that they didn't bring it back for a third generation after this second generation ended, but then we at least did get the superb Corrado to replace it, so yeah, that's no bad thing, especially the V6 version of that car. But this is still a cracking car in its own right. I feel it's a little bit underrated. I don't think we have it in many other Forza games, so that's a bit of a shame, but it is still a brilliant car in its own right, and easily one of the more underrated front-wheel drive hatchbacks from the 80s or the early 90s, depending on what year you've got. But nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.